Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Transfer Portal CFB presented by NoContextCFB. Another great podcast lined up for y'all today. We had the interview with Bailey Zappi. Doug and I just spoke with him a few moments ago. Great interview. Hope y'all enjoyed that. Now we've got the podcast with a little weekend review. We have myself on for this, Doug again, Andrew, and Lauren. Nice to have you guys. Hope y'all are doing good and enjoyed the football this weekend.
Of course, always.
Georgia won, so I'm happy.
Played South
Did all of our teams win except for Liam's?
What is that about?
Correct. We beat who we're supposed to beat.
That's uncalled for. Fresno State was supposed to win. They won 4 in a row against us. The big brother beat the little brother. Come on.
That's an indictment on your program.
I just state the facts.
Yeah, Fresno State should not be beating
A Power 5 team 4 times in a row.
I state
That's
the
not named
sad,
Arizona.
I state the sad facts. That's just how it is for us. Well, that embarrassing loss saw UCLA free fall down the top 25 AP poll, of course. And as always on Mondays, we kind of go over the AP top 25, talk it over, kind of give our thoughts on it. We'll start with you, Doug, since your Bulldogs are up there near the top. What are your thoughts on this top 25?
So first thought is that, like I said, I always say Cincinnati should be ranked higher. I do think that they're at least better than A&M, at least at current construction. Sorry, Lauren. Oklahoma should not be a top 5 program. Like, they have been absolute poop juice. Grand scheme of things, like, you can't struggle to Tulane at home. You can't struggle to Nebraska at home. Like, they're lucky that their conference is a steaming pile of dog crap. Otherwise, they would actually be in a really bad spot. But outside of Oklahoma, there's the usual Ohio State being ranked way too high. Like, Tulsa lost to UC Davis. They are not a good team, but they kept on fighting. Tulsa kept on fighting until Ohio State eventually wore them out in like the last few minutes of the game. But Ohio State, again, way too high. Clemson, bro, it's Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is the worst Power 5 team east of the Mississippi. No, that you should not rely on a 4th down stop to beat Georgia Tech. That's just disgraceful. I'm in a mood for slandering other teams. Iowa State, like I said, you guys are not good. You're Alamo Bowl bound. Like, the fact that you're 14th actually disgusts me right now. North Carolina, I mean, Todd Chandler's my guy. Great running back. They actually did beat a decent Virginia team, but I still don't think he should be ranked. Outside of that, yeah, those are teams I think are overrated, underrated. Like you said, both Michigan schools, like Michigan's finally found a way to adjust from the loss of Ronnie Bell and their inability to pass the football. Kenneth Walker is probably the best running back in the country right now. So Sparty's doing pretty well, and they're not as anemic on offense as they used to be. Other than that, I do feel like for the most part, Ole Miss will probably sneak into the top 10 fairly soon. And BYU should get an at-large spot, hopefully, for the playoffs with the way they've played so far in their strength of schedule.
Yeah, definitely looking at Ole Miss as a potential riser as well. Unfortunately, the next game's against that powerhouse in Tuscaloosa, so that's never fun.
Shaky team.
We'll go to you next for your thoughts on the top 25, Lauren, since your Aggies are up there as well.
Yes, I like where they're at, pretty solid. There were some shaky things on that O-line this past week, but I think that was kind of an injury thing from Colorado, making sure some guys are well rested before facing Arkansas this week. But by Jimbo's meeting today, everything looked like everyone's back at practice looking well. I have 2 really big things that I stand by very strongly. I agree with a lot of what Doug said. Clemson's got to drop. Like, there's no need for them to be high at all. OU needs to drop a couple spots too. You can't look like that at home against Nebraska. Like, how embarrassing. But my number one is that I'm standing by. I would stand by this even if we weren't playing them this week. Is Arkansas doesn't need to be ranked. They're Arkansas. They're going to end up embarrassing themselves very soon. Heck, fingers crossed it happens on Saturday up at AT&T. They're Arkansas. Like literally, like that's all I have to say. I feel like another one that I stand pretty strongly is Auburn needs a little bit of respect. Bo Nix, to me, I know it's probably a strange thought, but I liked the way they played. Bo Nix is such a strange quarterback, but so I was tired taking that nap right after that 11 o'clock game, kind of peeking at that. I think Auburn needs a little bit of respect in there. They were a bit low. My third thing that I kind of forgot, it said I had to, three. I think UCLA needs to be dropped out of the top 25 after that loss. I'm very sorry, Liam. As I typed that in my notes, I was like, oh no, he's going to get mad at me. But you can't do these things and then expect to be ranked up there. Like, come on, it doesn't make any sense. So just a little fine tuning.
I was just happy to be ranked for a few weeks and be given the optimism for the first time in a few years. And I knew it was going to come crashing down at some point. I wasn't expecting it to happen there. Yikes. You did speak to Auburn too, and I feel like Auburn does need more respect eventually. I think they'll be a solid team in the long run. I did like what I saw from them against Penn State, even though I still had issues with them offensively and with Bo and receivers not able to track the ball under the lights. But no, I mean, for the most part, Auburn was fairly impressive, and I think Penn State's really impressed me as well. Big Ten team, we'll go to you, Andrew. Your Gophers unranked, but what are your thoughts on top 25, all that?
Yeah. First of all, I'm not going to debate Gophers not being top 25. They shouldn't be. Their 2 wins. Their wins are Colorado, who abysmal offense, and Miami, Ohio was way too close of a game for it to be worthy of 1 vote. But yeah, I feel like Doug got a lot of our beliefs out the way. Clemson and Ohio State, they're up there because of their names. Clemson, I believe, has scored 17 points against their 2 FBS games. 17 points. That's abysmal. Like we came into this season thinking Clemson's going to be one of the best teams in the country. We saw a lot of hype around DJ at quarterback. He hasn't lived up to it. So Clemson should not be that high. Ohio State, CJ Stroud, another quarterback who was hyped up coming into the season. He's very underwhelming. Their Ohio State's defense, like we knew they weren't going to be like the best. They suck. Like for lack of better words, they are freaking putrid. It's just so sad to see Ohio State have such talented players on offense like Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. And they suck on defense. It's weird because a lot of the teams in the past for Ohio State, obviously you think of great offenses, but they have very solid defensive players as well. So I don't know why a team like Florida isn't ahead of them, who have a 2-point loss to Alabama compared to Clemson having a very close win against Georgia Tech and Ohio State having a close game against Tulsa for 3 1/4 quarters. I'm also going to go on the Ole Miss route. I think Ole Miss needs to be higher. I think Matt Corral has proven himself as the top ranked Heisman contender right now. And yeah, I'm also going to go kind of against what Liam and Lauren said. I don't know why Auburn is getting this much love. I think they looked okay against Penn State, but their 2 wins are Akron and Alabama State. The fact that they're ranked after losing to their first Power 5 team, it's a little confusing to me.
I mean, I do understand it. I'm just saying in the long run, I think.
Oh, yeah. In the long run, I think they're a good team. I just don't see why they should be ranked when they have Akron and Alabama State as their wins, and then the first time they play
SEC
a Power
bias.
5 team.
It is.
There's
SEC
always
bias.
the SEC refs from that game. They got some votes.
Look, this isn't a Gus Malzahn run team, so I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt and see how they perform on run. And that's why I'm kind of excited to watch them play, although I'm still Bo is shaky, and I mean the defense is super fun though. I like what all 3 of you said. my biggest takeaway from the top 25 is Iowa State should not be top 15. I have no idea what we're doing. Your best one is UNLV, who's on their third and fourth quarterbacks, and it's a disaster there. Iowa State is not a good team. They're not a top 25 team right now. BYU was super impressive these last few weeks. I think they're a better team than they were last year. I really do. Jaron Hall just brings another dynamic to that offense with his innate ability as a rusher, and he still throws the ball incredibly well. Not the level Wilson did, but he does have immaculate touch on his throws. So looking forward to that. I mean, it's hard to like. Oklahoma shouldn't be up there right now, but it's just there's 3 teams up there that like they're just up there because of what their brand is, and that's what the AP top 25 is, selling the casual fans to watch teams and games based on the number next to their name. So if those brand names are up there where they should be, then yeah, people are going to watch them. People are going to watch Clemson, and it's going to bring in a whole lot of viewers when they're in the dogfight against Georgia Tech, who threw the game away because they're running a shovel pass on the 1 yard line. Like, what are we doing? Another team I would just point out there, I don't know. I'm glad Fresno State got their respect, even though having the tough loss to Oregon on their schedule. I think Fresno State deserves to be ranked, so good for them. They were the better team on Saturday, and they really could have, should have, would have be in Oregon if some other things had gone their way, but it doesn't happen. They're a really good Mountain West team, really good Group of 5 team. Looking forward to seeing them in Nevada just perform at such a high level on the Mountain West this year. Next thing I want to get into is a takeaway from the weekend. Just one thing. I don't know, maybe you learned something or thought something else, correcting yourself, whatever it be. I'll start with you again, Doug.
My takeaway is to stop gambling. I had the Boise State -3 on a parlay that everything hit. Outside of that, that was fun. I had Pitt -14.5. That was fun. Watching them waste a masterful Kenny Pickett performance, messing up my money. So don't bet and pray for Arizona. That program, it's bad. Like, losing to an in-stage FCS team, like, I would say the program has nowhere to go up, but they really haven't. There's no up for them. They're just stuck.
They're
just
down bad.
Yeah, down bad, Hall of Fame.
You say don't gamble, so it's a good time to plug the No Context CF betting show that y'all could watch on Twitch on Friday nights. So go follow us on Twitch at No Context CFB. Good gambling content, just Doug won't participate, so all good. Lauren, what's your takeaway from this weekend?
My takeaway basically emphasizes one of our points in the top 25 conversation. Clemson. Oops, so sorry, everyone. Forgot that type was going off.
PTSD alarm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that takeaway is Clemson is not Clemson right now. I think we all got kind of in that trance of what Trevor Lawrence can do, and that offense, of course, needs a little bit of scrubbing. Nothing against DJ, incredible quarterback. I'm sure he'll end up finding his way in that program, but right now, Clemson is not what we know them to be. And, those are some very low scores from a team we've gotten used to putting up, like a very high-powered offense. And, I'm expecting more. I'm getting kind of bored. Like, they're not a game that I will turn on to look forward to that offense.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues within Clemson, and one of them is their offensive line play has been abysmal, and they need to figure that out because they're not setting DJ up for success. DJ needs to be better, yeah, but he's not in a position to succeed right now with how bad that offensive line is playing, how poor their play calling is. The run game isn't thriving. Like that offense is just a train wreck, and it's
So the one thing I will say is that I also don't think that Clemson is having the right type of players out wide to help DJ succeed. Like this is probably the least amount of separation I've seen Clemson receivers get in a long while. Because back in the day, Clemson used to get a lot of separation. Like that was one thing, at least going back to Taj Boyd, going to Deshaun, like those receivers could generate separation enough to where Deshaun could get easy throws. Trevor could get easy throws. I just don't think like their skill positions with how it's set up for DJ. I also don't think DJ is that kind of quarterback as well. He can't necessarily throw them open as well. But at the same time, I just don't think that they've set him up to success with the type of talent that they surround him with out wide. Yeah. So
I like that take, and that's a really good thing to spot that I'm sure a lot of fans aren't seeing. So that was really good. Andrew, what's your big takeaway from this weekend?
I think it's more of a takeaway of what we've seen from this year overall, but a lot coming from this weekend. The top three quarterbacks, well, the consensus top three quarterbacks that were hyped up coming into the season, they've all been underwhelming. Rattler, DJ, and Sam Howell. They've just been, they haven't been bad. Well, you can make the case for DJ, but also that offense is just bad in itself. And Dabo, don't get me started on him. They just haven't performed. Spencer Rattler, like he's had good performances, but he's not performing to the expectations that he should against the types of opponents that he's been getting. Tulane, Nebraska, I'm looking at you. Sam Howell, he had that abysmal performance against Virginia Tech week 1, and he's gotten a little bit better, but I would still like to see him get a lot better because I believe he was the Heisman favorite coming into the year betting wise. And with DJ, I don't know what it is with DJ. He looked really good last year for Clemson, and I'm just so confused about what's happening because the scheme looks different as what Doug was talking about. The receivers just don't get any separation. It's really tough for a quarterback to succeed when your receivers just really can't get open, and you can't expect him to have perfect ball placements for a jump ball for a 6'4" receiver every time. He's playing in his first full season. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I just like DJ is underperforming, but I think it's more because of what's around him right now. I just don't think he's set up for success. So I'm not really tripping over him as like he'll be good. He'll be straight when things start going his way. He starts getting more help. Rattler was the Heisman favorite, by the way, not Howell. With Rattler, he's making the same mistakes that he has in years past. He just hasn't corrected those. And then with Howell, I think a lot of it, I think there's some overreaction because I still like him as a draft prospect, of course. I think it needed to be looked at more that he lost like everything of the talent surrounding him at skill positions, and that he's not going to go in there and be able to thrive right from the get-go. It takes time. It's the same with like CJ Stroud. It'll take time for him to sell and get going. It takes time. Matt Corral, it took time for him to become this Heisman stud. Like it takes time, and there's no patience. There's not a lot of patience in college football, and that's why the transfer portal is such a big thing.
That's a new chapter, right?
Yes. My takeaway from this weekend is that it's been boiling up inside me for years, but targeting needs to go. We need to figure this out ASAP. It has to go. We're making mistake after mistake after mistake. Ejecting kids from a half of a game or 3 quarters or like the fourth quarter of a game and then the first half of their next game. Like we're ejecting kids for playing defense. And as I've always mentioned with this rule, it's subjective to every ref and their crew, and it's not written well. It's a poorly written rule. It's not clear at all. When an offensive player lowers his head, and the only reason that contact to the head was made was because he lowered his head, why is the defender being ejected from a game and 15 yards go into the offense for contact the offensive player, the ball carrier initiated? It doesn't make any sense. The rule should not be a thing. And this is the thing. It's like, people get mad because they're like, oh, it's protecting the game, whatever. Yeah, there's ways to protect it without having this garbage rule that's so biased towards the offense and getting the ball downfield and ruining defensive. It's bad. And then it's no malicious contact. It just happens. Like, they're playing football. That poor kid, I can't think of his name, on Auburn. The Penn State player is reaching for the end zone, so his head is down and he's trying to put the ball into the end zone, so the defender is diving in to make a play on the ball carrier and the ball so that he doesn't get in the end zone and that they live another down and can prevent the touchdown, and he's now ejected for the game. What is that? It's bad. Like, they're not protecting players at all. It's just, and then when malicious contact is made and it's with malicious intent, that's never called targeting. They just let it happen. And like, those are the hits that they need to watch for, the bad ones, the malicious ones that cause injury, that have no football play at all. But then when an offensive player lowers his head because he's reaching for a first down and he gets knocked in the upper body, the shoulder, the head, whatever, because the defender's making a play, like, they getting ejected for that. It's terrible. The SC kicker getting ejected, awful. Linebackers getting ejected for like 4th and 3, and it's a run play, and they're getting in there.
I would love to see a receiver get ejected for it. I think it would be hilarious. I think the internet would break.
I know an offensive player has gotten ejected for targeting before. I don't remember the game or anything, but I know it's happened before. I wish I knew from what, but it's just like, the defensive player shouldn't be ejected for targeting, and of course the offensive player shouldn't be ejected for targeting. They're playing football. Like, and everybody who's watching, every former player, analyst, fan is tired of this garbage. The only good thing about targeting is it's not like it was 3-4 years ago, where the reviews would take a literal 18 minutes, and that ruins the complete flow of the game and everything. So they fixed that aspect of it.
I'll say this about targeting. It's come a long way, because those early targeting calls, you call it for anything.
Yeah, anything. There was a review every other play. Like,
oh no, like, it's also like the letter of the law. Like, you would have kits that are like nowhere close. Like, I remember it was Ray Drew against Vanderbilt. He just blew up the quarterback. He just literally extended his arms. Next thing you know, he got called targeted and he got ejected, which is like stupid.
The extending arms one has been called multiple times this year. I've seen it's blasphemous.
Yeah, no. Like, I think I forgot what announcer said that, like, if he was in charge, they do targeting like they do flagrant fouls. So, like, flagrant 1 is just a penalty, and then flagrant 2 is like ejection. So if it's like something like totally malicious, then get the boot. But like, if it's just a regular like bad hit, then 15 yards.
Yeah, I know that's been a big talking point amongst the college football scene. I know Joel Klatt is.
Oh yeah, that was him.
He's lobbying for the targeting A, targeting B, which I just think, drop targeting. If there's a complete malicious hit that is not a football play, then I don't know, call personal foul, unnecessary roughness, whatever it be, and then eject the kid if it's like not a football play. But ejecting guys for tackling is a joke. Losing 15 yards for tackling is a joke. It's a joke, and we need to fix that. So we spent a lot of time talking about that garbage rule. We really targeted in on targeting. What did you guys see and watch this weekend that you liked? We'll start with you, Lauren.
I of course watched Texas A&M first row, whoop whoop, super fun. My big takeaways from that game: that Texas A&M defense looks good. The week before the season started, I was going around telling people how much I was afraid of these DBs, how like they were not going to do well. and I am impressed. I'm taking my words back very gladly. Also super impressed with that wide receiver depth. If you're able to just sit there and just grab guys off the bench and score a touchdown with them, we love to see it. And I think that'll definitely help them just through the rest of the season, diversify his playbook a bit. Of course, watched Auburn and Penn State, and literally all I can say is Bo Nix just really confuses me as a quarterback. We always have such high expectations of him through college football. I feel like everyone's like, Bo Nix, third season, he'll do great. And it just like weirdness happens. I just think about that a lot. It just doesn't make any sense. Watch Bama, Florida, and shout out Florida for exposing some of the Tide's weaknesses. Florida just kind of, I don't know, I feel like they're going to end up being a mess at some point, but they can expose some of those issues with Alabama to kind of help other teams, aka Texas A&M, October 9th. I'm going to appreciate it. So that's what I took from the weekend.
Yeah, I definitely like what I saw from Florida too. Defensively was very impressive. Kyer Elam really is one of the top defensive players in the country, top players in the country. We need to give that man more respect. He's just so dang good at what he does. Speaking of A&M, yeah, anytime you could hold the opposing quarterback to 1.4 yards per pass, I think he did something good, even albeit it was touchdown Terry Wilson at New Mexico. But hey, it's impressive nonetheless.
A shutout is a shutout. That's what Jimbo said.
Very
true. We trust, my shirt says.
Very true.
Paid him all that money, so you kind of have to trust him.
I do, fully.
In Chip Kelly, we trust.
I'd say, okay.
Kirby.
Andrew, let's go to you for what you saw this weekend. You watched Row the Boat.
Unfortunately, I couldn't because it was on Pac-12 Network.
Oh, yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, so instead of listening to the radio like I would usually, I just decided I'm going to pay attention to other games. But I will say, I did pay attention to some of the updates. The fact that we got a shutout watching our defense for the first few games of the season, my gosh, I knew Colorado's offense was awful, but the fact that we got pressure was just chef's kiss. But going to games I actually watched, I want to first talk about Mississippi State Memphis. You can talk about the game all you want. I'm going to talk about the call, the call that we all know, arguably one of the worst calls. It's probably not even arguably the worst call I've seen this year. So for those who don't remember, Memphis, they're getting the ball from Mississippi State on a punt. Mississippi State punts the ball. They down it. The Mississippi State gunner has his hand on the ball, knee on the ground. Ref's doing the good old, play's dead. But because apparently, I don't know why, apparently since one of the Memphis guys was like, oh, he didn't pick up the ball or anything, he just picked it up and ran it into the end zone for a touchdown. Well, first of all, the ref did the good old, hey, play's dead, but he just let it keep going. Very confusing to me. I don't know how on earth that stood. I don't know why there weren't just whistles going everywhere saying, hey, this ref just blew it dead. And the fact that they didn't even review it. Like, I understand if there's a little miscommunication between the refs, saying one, play's dead. The other one's like, oh, I don't know if he fully downed it. Let's keep it live just in case. You don't even review it. That's the stupidest part. Like, obviously, it's an easy call to make. You got to review it at least. So that's my take on Mississippi State, Memphis. Mississippi State should have won that game. I'm going to go to Michigan State, Miami. If Miami is a hurricane, Kenneth Walker is a freaking typhoon. That guy, my gosh, Kenneth Walker is the best running back in the nation right now. He had 170-something yards, if I remember correctly, which was more than double the over for his set rushing yards at like 88.5. I don't know how people didn't just hammer that to oblivion. But I want to talk a little bit more about Peyton Thorne, the quarterback for the Spartans. We're going to give Kenneth Walker his flowers as he deserves. Peyton Thorne has been accurate for the Spartans. He went 18 to 31, 261 yards and 4 touchdowns against the Hurricanes in a quite literal rout. They were 6.5-point dogs and they won by multiple possessions.
Michigan State.
I think Michigan State's a top 20 team in the country. I think Miami proved they're not a top 35, 40 team. Miami just looks abysmal. it's probably not even 40. It's probably 50. Like they just suck. Cincy IU. Cincy has had a few game stretch where they just kind of start off slow. This was no different. They started off slow against Murray State, started off very slow against Indiana. They went down, I believe, 14-0 pretty early. Went on to cover the spread, had a big return kick, give them the momentum they needed. I'm a little worried about Desmond Ridder. I don't think he's a bad player. I just don't know if he's the type of quarterback that's like a first-round pick. I don't think he's a quarterback that shows the talent, the at least consistency. We know he's talented. I just don't know if he's consistent enough to keep up and have an amazing season for the Bearcats. That's probably my only question with them being a playoff team, because if we're looking at the board right now, it's Bama, almost guaranteed lock unless they just fall apart. Georgia, I think 2 SEC teams probably end up making the playoff. I know you're happy about that, Doug. And
Smart
then
man.
if Oregon keeps up how they're playing, they win the Pac-12, they probably make the playoff. Ohio State isn't good enough. Clemson isn't good enough. Cincy's probably going to end up being that wild card, because who else would you think? Maybe definitely not going to be 3 SEC teams if Florida keeps playing well. Definitely also no fullness. SEC really is stacked. Big Ten, I guess, is probably your only other hope. Maybe Oklahoma, but at the same time, Oklahoma plays cupcakes. So Penn State, if they go undefeated, Iowa, if they go undefeated, Minnesota, if they have 1 loss. Yeah, it's tough.
Speaking to that 4th playoff team, just be prepared in a few months if we're all very upset it's Notre Dame. Like I don't want them to be a playoff team.
It can't be.
We don't want them to be. We'll refute it, and we'll refuse that possibility in every way possible. But we've seen the same story before where, well, there's their 4, and we have to live with the consequence of watching them get beat down. So,
but next week, I know this is a review of last week. I'm going to skip forward to next week. We have Cincy Notre Dame. So if Cincy wins against Notre Dame and Cincy ends up winning the conference, there's no way that they don't make the playoff over Notre Dame if it was between those 2 teams, because they have the head-to-head.
Yeah, Cincy would be in.
Cincy would be in. The only thing is that Notre Dame would still have more wins
quality wins,
because they'll beat Wisconsin. Wisconsin most likely will be 9-3. Notre Dame would, depending on which USC shows up, because it's USC, you already know it's not. It could be either 11-1 or
7-5.
Yeah, exactly. Because they play Wisconsin, they have Cincinnati, they play USC at home this year. Nice. They have UNC, so that's another ranked team, even though they're not really good. But yeah, no, honestly, looking at Notre Dame's schedule, it's actually kind of on the weaker side this year in terms of, outside of this 2-game stretch here, because it's AVT, USC, Notre Dame, North Carolina, Navy, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Stanford. Wouldn't call that a murderer's row.
And I just want to speak to Cincy real quick. The best thing they have going for them is prior respect that they've built up these past few years. That's the best thing they have going for them, because that goes a long way. Starting ranked so highly, they're having predetermined thoughts about them going into the year, not coming up late and making noise late and having to boost off late momentum. The fact that since he was able to build something up these last few years, cook something up, is going to go a long way for them if they're going to make a playoff run. Want to speak to Ridder real quick. I think he's a 3rd round guy. I really haven't seen it with him, unfortunately. And just for Cincy's schedule, they caught a few breaks, like that Gabriel injury. They're going to play a UCF team that could have been a scary game, and it's going to be without Gabriel. Like, that's not a threat anymore. The biggest threats on their schedule are what? At Tulane and hosting SMU, aside from Notre Dame game. Like, their schedule kind of got a lot softer than it was 3 weeks ago. So
I think that SMU game is probably their biggest challenge outside of Notre Dame. But I do like SMU's team, so that's gonna be interesting to watch.
Speaking of SMU, did our fans catch that end of the SMU Louisiana Tech game?
Of course, I was gonna speak about that in a few minutes.
Go ahead. I mean, we brought
I want to give you your floor for what you watched and all that.
All right, perfect. So we're gonna go all the way back to Friday. We watched an instant classic with Central Florida Louisville, which for some reason Louisville actually scored a defensive touchdown to win the game. It makes zero sense. It broke the time-space continuum because Louisville's absolutely dog poop on defense, but they pulled out the win. Impressive. Got to give them that. Like Lauren said, Florida exposed a lot of Alabama, but Alabama pulled it out in the end. I'm happy because Florida lost. That makes me happy every single day of the week. Georgia pretty much dominated South Carolina for opening snap. I pretty much fell asleep after halftime. No reason to worry. My same game parlay hit. So that was good. Moving forward, one thing I will say about Cincinnati and Indiana, mainly about Indiana, Penix has not looked good this season. He has thrown some of the worst interceptions I have seen. I believe the last two that he threw against Cincinnati should not have. The last few he threw against Cincinnati should not have been thrown. There was just some of the most egregious throws I've ever seen. Like I had mentioned earlier when we did our season preview, Indiana would drop down because I didn't think Penix was that good, and he's proven me right so far. So 1-2, I don't think that they will go bowling. I just don't think that they're going to be ranked again for the rest of the season. So I was right. Haha, I win. Moving forward, Black Diamond's always a nice thing to see. Pretty good battle at the end. Nice goal line stand by West Virginia there. Very impressive from them. I mentioned BYU. BYU is probably the best team out west, including Oregon. I will say that. Speaking of Oregon and the rest of the Pac-12, pray for that conference, y'all. Like the Pac-12 South, USC is the only one that won that weekend. Arizona lost the FCS program. Arizona State, no shame in losing to BYU. Utah lost to San Diego State. I told y'all Utah was overrated. To Philly special for the 2-point conversion. Shout out San Diego State right there. Yeah, but it's just in general between the state of Florida and the Pac-12, like it's going to be a down year for some big teams and conferences. Not pretty. And my final note, I have no idea what's going to happen with Miami and Florida State. You can't get blown out by Wake. Wake's a good team, but come on, it's Wake Forest. Just by name value alone, that's just a pretty big stain on your reputation as a football program. And Miami just looks completely lost. Like De'Aaron King, he just hasn't looked like the quarterback people thought he was last year or even back in Houston. Good player, but I wouldn't say like he's him. I think he's been found out. I think he's been found out in terms of his play style and how to adjust to Miami. Even with Flashley there, I'm pretty certain they got found out pretty quickly. Getting beat by Bama, okay. Struggling with Appalachian State, not the greatest thing. I mean, App State's good, but you can't really struggle with them for a program of that stature. And then just Michigan State just destroying you. Yeah, might be time to Willie Taggart, Manny Diaz, but Miami won't because they're cheap.
Yeah, Manny Diaz should be on the hot seat. He is abysmal, in my opinion. They should have lost to App State. I don't want to speak more on that game because I have so much. Brett Lashley I'll say it. He's a joke. He's a joke of a play caller. Like, he doesn't set De'Aaron up for success. De'Aaron hasn't looked like himself these last few years because of the lack of talent surrounding him on Miami's offense, their offensive line. The play calling it's so bad, man. They're not playing to his strengths or anything. I'll get off of Miami, though, since I've hated on them all season. Indiana, you speak to a bowl game, but that schedule is so tough. Like, our guy Bailey Zappi's got Indiana this week. That's a potential loss for Indiana. Well, they have Penn State after this, and then Ohio State, Michigan State. I said me and you both spoke so lowly of Indiana all offseason. I had them starting 1-5 or 1-4 or something like that. One of the two. Either way.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Yeah, you had them like really low.
So yeah, they're on that route, in my opinion. Looking forward to the Western Kentucky +9, even though we don't do gambling here, like Doug said. Yeah, so my thing I watched this weekend, like that I want to talk about, was the SMU Louisiana Tech game, because the dang Hail Mary from Southern Methodist was sick, and I think a lot of people didn't realize that was a set play. It's called Big Ben. Rashee Rice, my breakout receiver to watch, future NFL stud, comes flying in out of nowhere. Superman tips it right to Roberson for a touchdown. That is such a beautifully designed play that needed more love, and just not like, it wasn't a fluke. That's something that they practiced, I don't know how many times, because I'm not a well in bed mole in Dallas watching their practice, but they practice that all the time, and practice really made perfect. They shouldn't have been in that spot where they're needing a bailout to beat Louisiana Tech. SMU's a much better team than they showed, but for that, just that improbable play that they worked so hard on and got to see the results of that happen, like, they deserve a lot of love for it. Rashee Rice deserves a lot more love for the tip there. I think the assistant head coach or associate head coach at SMU made his Twitter profile picture the Rashee Rice's headshot, so they're having fun with it. They know how big that tip from Rashee was. And yeah, I don't know. That was kind of my favorite thing I watched this weekend. Then we'll go into our storylines here. I really like my storyline too, but I'll let you guys have the floor. We'll start with you, Lauren. What's one storyline your favorite storyline that's unraveling this season?
All right. I was looking and thinking, and the more and more I kept thinking, I remember that there was one thing that I keep seeing that I'm going to talk about. It is also A&M related, so very sorry, everyone. I was like, you can't, but I have to. Let's put some respect on Zach Calzada's name. I very big mental health advocate for some athletes. Oh. However, I have seen some trash tweets about someone who's my age, so 20 years old, who was thrown in the Colorado game. He was told he wasn't the starter for the season. It was a tense quarterback battle all off season. Didn't do too hot, however, was 4-4 in the fourth quarter of the Colorado game. Came out with the win, right? All's well. Played very well. Showed that cannon that everyone was looking for in what he would bring to the offense and able to do to this offense to make it more dynamic. As I said before, we have so many receivers in that room, like, let's utilize them. And Zach really was able to bring that to the offense. So I would like to unravel the story of Zach Calzada being named a hero in A&M season, because it's going to continue to be a greater offense. And it's embarrassing, some of the tweets people are saying about how trash he was, because yes, it was New Mexico, but come on, you have to give someone credit where credit's due. You can't, those throws are still going to happen against other teams as well. And I stand on that very strongly.
Yeah, he threw an absolute dime to beat Colorado. So, good for him. Hopefully he continues the upward trajectory and succeeds at a high level, and people start putting more respect on his name, like you said. We'll go to you for your favorite unraveling storyline, Doug.
Mine is the Pac-12 South race. As I mentioned earlier, these teams are not good. Like Jackson Dart looked pretty impressive. Granted, it was Wazoo with the coach that's probably getting fired in the next 3 weeks. But Jackson Dart looking good in relief of Slovis. And USC was the only one to win that week. You have Utah that's been reeling the past few weeks. You had UCLA with the upset with Fresno State. You had Arizona State with BYU. Like, in general, a lot of the teams are on a level playing field, and Arizona. Sorry, Arizona, I don't know why I keep on picking on you guys. You're just so bad. But back to my point, I'm just curious to see which team will end up upsetting Oregon. in the Pac-12 title game, just mainly because you can go wherever, which direction. Like I do think that Arizona State has the best quarterback. I think UCLA has the best overall talent. I do think that USC has a chip to play on with their coach being fired, and they love their interim coach. There's a lot of opportunity in that Pac-12 South. Utah in general, they're still pretty solid-ish, even though I generally do think that they'll end up playing in like a low-tier bowl. But people like them for some reason. But so I'm just going to group them up there. But that race is probably the one thing that's going to keep on unraveling as the season goes on. And hopefully they don't put any of the games on the Pac-12 network so I can actually watch.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing there is each Pac-12 team thinks Larry Scott has to have 3 Pac-12 network games every year.
Hopefully it's the North versus South, because I do not want to deal with the South team.
So bad. UCLA Stanford is on Pac-12 network, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken. Let me double check.
Stanford actually looks good with McKee too, so it's like that's not
yeah,
an easy game to
Pac-12
get used
network,
to.
very fun, sick. Yeah, the Pac-12 South just more carnage as usual, right? Beating each other up. It's really fun, but it's also really painful when you're a fan of one of those teams. Feel bad for anyone that is. Andrew, we'll go to you for your favorite unraveling storyline.
I am going to go with the new head coach for South Alabama, Kane Womack, or I'm probably going to butcher that name. One of 2 new coaches this year, undefeated through week 3. The other one would be the new head coach for Utah State. I've just been kind of interested about his routes. He was the former DC for the Jaguars. Then he went up to Indiana, who, I mean, we saw them last few years. They had some pretty good defensive talents. Came back to South Alabama, now is their head coach, undefeated through week 3. And I think it's just going to be really interesting to see what he can do with that program in the Sun Belt.
Love that you're dipping into the Sun Belt there. You mentioned Utah State. Yeah, my favorite unraveling storyline is about the Aggies. It's just the one in Logan, not College Station. This is a really fun story with Blake Anderson, who was a beloved head coach at Arkansas State, a true fan favorite across the country. For those that know his story, he got dealt a rough hand here at Utah State, and he is thriving. The Vegas win total for this team was 3. After 3 weeks, they're 3-0. So they're already pushing. They're going to win that bet. So congrats to anyone that got free money and found this gem of a bet. They're picked to finish like bottom 2 or 3 in the Mountain West, and they look very good. Their offense is explosive. In their 3 games, they have scored 49 against Air Force this past week. They scored 48 against North Dakota, who's a top 15-20 FCS program, and they needed a comeback in that game to spark them. And then against Washington State on the road, they won 26-23 with a late touchdown. Devin Tompkins is thriving. He has 8.3 catches per game, a touchdown each game. This past weekend, he had 174 yards receiving, if I'm not mistaken. Back-to-back games with touchdowns over 70 yards. He's thriving. This is just a really fun team to watch, and I'm excited to see how they do. I think they're going to have a big year. Against Air Force, they were down 24-13, and then they were down 45-34. And in the final 10 minutes, they were able to score 2 touchdowns and beat Air Force, which is an impressive win for a team that was thought so lowly of coming into the year. They go into Air Force as like 9-point underdogs and beat them 49-45. That's not something you see very often. And to do that, they needed a 72-yard touchdown from Tompkins and a 61-yard run from Calvin Taylor. So they are explosive. I like the 2 quarterback system that they've got going on. It works. It's something Anderson actually used at Arkansas State. He brought one over, Logan Bonner. So he's out there thriving. These next 2 weeks are probably going to be rough because they face Boise State, and then they play BYU on a Friday night rivalry game there. But then after that, they've got UNLV, so there's a free win. So we'll say that's their 4th win. Colorado State, 5th win. Hawaii, 6th win. New Mexico State, 7th win. And then San Jose State, Wyoming, New Mexico. So New Mexico, that's like 8 wins. This is a team that could really win 8 games. And they came into the year with no expectations of being good at all. Those wins I just gave them, those 5, are essentially gimmies. There are no gimmies in college football unless like Alabama playing DeVry. Alabama playing Arizona, not DeVry. But this is a team that could really win 8 games. And with the momentum that they're going to be picking up and the possibilities of upsets and all that stuff, maybe they pick off Boise State or BYU. They host both of them. Both those games are at home. They face Wyoming late in the year. That could be a win at San Jose State. Who knows? This is a team that could really win a minimum of 8 games. They could win a 9th or a 10th somehow. This isn't a team anybody would have thought this for coming into Blake Anderson's first year coaching a team that was in a garbage situation. He has turned this program around so quick. It's incredibly impressive. So I really like the storyline at Utah State, and Devin Tompkins is thriving. The 5'8" receiver who's like 160 pounds is the most prolific receiver in the country right now when it comes to per game averages. So keep an eye on Utah State.
Yeah. So Liam, right? So I'm gonna say it. They're gonna win the Mountain. They're gonna win that division right now. Because think about it. Boise they have not looked good. Backmeyer has been he's a good student. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So like you said, like, because outside of these next 2 weeks, their only big difficult game left is San Jose State. So like it's totally winnable. Wyoming's looked pretty shaky. Even though they're undefeated, I still think Wyoming's not necessarily like that good. I mean, they've looked pretty shaky. But yeah, no, put me down for Utah State to win the division.
Yeah, it's so crazy that that's a legit possibility. And like, I was cautiously optimistic tracking the storyline last week before the Air Force game, because that's on the road. That's a tough game. The altitude, the potential weather, you're facing an academy, the option, all that stuff. And they go and win a 49-45 shootout. That's so impressive. And that offense, I'm telling you, it's so fun and explosive. They're hitting big play after big play after big play. They're using 2 quarterbacks. Devin Tompkins has indescribably elite burst and just runs away from people like it's nothing. It is a very fun team. And on defense, I think it's Justin. It could not be Justin. I'm tripping on his first name, but Rice, super good defender. He's put up back-to-back performances that are worthy of more recognition. If it wasn't for Verone McKinley, he would have been my player of the week last week. He's, I think, had a pick 6 last week and had another interception this week. He's doing big things, double-digit tackles, all that fun stuff. So, yeah, spoke a lot about Utah State, a little too much. I'm sorry, but that's the storyline I'll be tracking this season. And that'll be it for this episode. So, yeah, appreciate Andrew, Lauren, Doug helping me out tonight, coming on for his podcast. Real good stuff from the 3 of them, and appreciate them and all that. Make sure to follow us on YouTube. Oh, no, it's subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at TPortalCFB. Do whatever you have to do on Spotify and Apple. Like, I don't know, what is it? Hit the follow button on there, whatever, or subscribe. I don't know what it is, but do whatever you can. And like the YouTube video. You have to do that too. That way we could all eat.
Hungry, yeah.
So, yeah, that'll do it. See ya.